The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, the bacon is sizzling. Welcome to the Daily Swole.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 95 of the Daily Mother Swole. Yes, gains, biceps. But now we're talking about the bottom legs, not my top legs. We're talking about the bottom sole. We're talking about getting calves bigger. Now, I personally don't have absolutely massive calves. They're very defined, and I have good shape in my muscle, but I've had to work extremely hard for it. First off, genetics. Genetics don't always play a role in everything, but they do play a massive role in calf development. The thing with the calves is that they are designed to perform activity over and over again. They're not designed to do massive amounts of resistance with very low endurance because you're meant to walk. So they're meant to provide motility, and provide locomotion through the ankle. Now, the interesting about the calves is if you think about what you can do with such a small muscle and with such limited movement, if you wanted to, let's say you're 200 pounds, I'm about 200 pounds. If I were to just go up on my toes, I could very easily just lift 200 pounds. If I were to put 200 pounds on my hands, I could not lift it for a curl. Neither could you. So whatever you weigh, if you're able to go up on your toes, you're lifting all your body weight. Now, why is that? It's because of the lever. The type of joint and the way the muscles wrap around the joint, it's a type 2 lever rather than the type of lever system that's in the biceps and the arm, where the force is, where the lever arm is. I'm not going to get into the biomechanics, but it's designed to provide a lot of strength with very little effort. That's why you're able to walk for miles and miles. You could walk all day. You could walk for 24 hours if you wanted to. Doesn't mean you wouldn't be sore, wouldn't have blisters, but you could walk all day if you wanted to without, even without training, because those muscles are designed, they're type 1 fibers, which means they have a lot of endurance, but they aren't designed. Type 1 fibers are not designed to get massive, to get jacked. That is the challenge. And everyone is born with muscle structure that's a various composition of type 1 and type 2 fibers. Some people in certain muscles have maybe 60% type 2, 40% type 1, and some people have 50-50, some people have 60-40 the other way. And when you are looking at the composition of your muscle, you're not going to know. You're not going to know what your composition is of the muscle. You're not going to do a biopsy. You're not going to cut into it. You're not going to do an analysis. And it's going to be extremely difficult to get an accurate answer anyway. But if you're having trouble growing your calves and you're doing heavy resistance, first off, you need to mix it up. So I don't know the answer for you directly. No one's going to know the answer. You might look in a magazine and say, oh, this bodybuilder does heavy weight and recommends this. This bodybuilder recommends higher reps. Everyone's going to recommend something different, because no one has a direct answer, because everyone is different. You might find, I'm just give you some options of ways you can grow. You might find that high reps work better. Bottom line, you want to work to failure. You might find that heavyweight works better and lower repetitions. You might find that a combination, okay? Yeah, on Periscope, the calves are jacked and he has never worked them. Yeah, some people just have massive muscles. Some people just have big calf muscles. And that is just luck of the draw. It's complete genetics. It's complete, absolute genetics. My personal experience, I like working them more frequently because the calves get a lot of stress because they're designed for a lot of activity on a regular basis. I like to work them more frequently and overload them more frequently. I don't necessarily crush them until I can't walk, but I give them constant stress and I give them a variety of stress. I do high reps, I do low reps. I do a lot of seated calf raise. I like a lot of seated calf raise, which works mostly the soleus, the muscle underneath the gastrocnemius, which is The gastrocnemius is the ball part of the calf. The soleus is underneath, and the soleus is really responsible in many ways during the squat movement. It's responsible for, if it's too tight, limited mobility of the ankle. But if that muscle develops and gets stronger and thicker, it helps push the calf muscle out and gives you a little bit more width and more thickness. So I like seated calf raises. I don't do a lot of necessarily foot positioning, but I change it up and I go for the squeeze. I go for the full contraction. So sometimes I go for longer holds, longer stretch at the bottom, slower contractions, and a hold at the top. I do like a 2 or 3 second hold at the top and the bottom. Sometimes I go a little bit faster. Sometimes I do higher rep. I mix it up. I like doing a variety. I like doing standing calf raise. I like doing single leg press. Calves, I did yesterday in my Periscope. I like doing, like I said, seated. So I do a combination of seated, standing, and I like doing it frequently. That's where I think the difference is, finding out whether or not you like the frequency of calf training. I don't find... Right. Well, the calves also do knee flexion. So if you do a lot of cycling, that's why a lot of cyclists have developed calf muscles. And that's another reason, that's another point when it comes into, size of calf muscles, just because the frequency of that type of activity. I find that it's been more along the lines of how frequently I train them rather than, do I do high reps or low reps? I like going heavy. I like going high reps. Running, chances are no. Running is not a great activity in terms to grow calves. Spinning might be a little better, but I don't like spinning at all. I don't recommend spinning. You might like it. This is just my opinion because it just jacks up the hips. It puts, it rounds the spine. You're hunched over. It tightens up the hip flexors. It's poor for back flexibility, and it just tightens up people's calves, which usually compounds issues with squat movements because most people's calves are too tight. Now, when I say you're doing calf raises, a lot of times people's calves and ankle complex are really tight already, too tight, and it affects their squat. And if you're sitting down at the office all day and you're sitting in the car all day and then you go and you sit on a fucking spin bike, I think that's idiotic. If you know anything about exercise science, if you know anything about fitness, just to sit down and go cranking on a bike, you need to stretch, you need to do yoga, you need to open up your hips, you need to do more mobility. I'm not a big fan of spinning just because I don't find it that functional. I find it just like a hamster on a wheel, spinning your legs around in a hunched over, poor postural position. I'm not a big fan of it. You might like it. And that's, I always say, I'm open-minded. It comes down to what you like. If you really enjoy and you love it, then freaking do it. But I would definitely balance out. Yes, I do yoga and I teach yoga. So yoga is the number one thing you should be doing aside from weight training. Yoga and weight training, done. You don't need to go running. You don't need to go cycling. You don't need to go run, bouncing around doing 1,000 different exercises. So in order to get the calves to grow, I recommend you trying different schemes. Try doing 3 days a week. Don't just start going into every day if you're not used to it. Build up to it. Try a mixture of high and low rep, heavy weight, and then lower weight for higher rep. Make sure no matter what, you're going to failure. Remember, going to failure. Calves are a muscle. And as being a muscle, even though they're slower twitch generally, and they need, they have more endurance, you need to give them rest sometimes too. To lose weight, though, you're saying high intensity training is no, bodybuilding is high intensity training. I'm saying doing just like, jumping around and doing 30 box jumps and doing these CrossFit group classes. I say a lot, it's not direct. I always say this in my class, going back to the calf training, I always say that doing group classes and doing generalized training, it's not specific to you. It might work temporarily, but remember, it's not a program designed for you. You're not doing the best thing for you. You're doing what 30 or 40 other people are doing at the same time. That's a blanket exercise. That's a workout. That's not training. That's just general stuff. So you have to make sure that you're doing what's proper for you. That's why people get hurt, because it's not designed for them. So in terms of calf training, mix it up. Mix up with high reps and low reps. Go to failure. Do it more frequently. If you're not doing it frequently enough, do it more frequently, and engage your progress. See how your body is developing. You need flexibility too. That's why yoga and stretching regularly is very beneficial. Foam rolling is great because it opens up muscle fibers. It opens up things that can get very, very tight around the ankle joint. No matter what you do, you need to make sure you're maintaining flexibility in the ankle. If you do a lot of calf training, you're not stretching, you can get a couple things. You can get plantar fasciitis, where you get inflammation in the bottom of the foot. So you have to be careful. I'm not a big fan of bouncing around on the calves and doing like that bouncing movement. Be very careful doing things like jumping rope, because that's a great way to get tendonitis and get inflammation in the knees. You have to look at these high-risk exercises, the classic ones like, oh, well, it's just jump rope. Yeah, well, you're just pretty much bouncing like a spring. You have to understand where it leads. Look at the contrast. Look at what you're doing all day long, and then look at what you're doing with your training. You have to make sure that you are balancing everything out. We are not talking about supplements right now, so you can hold that question. With your calves, try the frequency of training. Try a higher repetition scheme mixed with a lower repetition scheme. You could try high rep only, but remember, you got to try it for a couple weeks first. You have to give it 2, 3, 4 weeks to see if higher rep training is what you're responding to. You can try periodizing. You could do heavy weight for a few weeks and then go to higher rep. You can do alternating weeks. Go to failure, play with your frequency of training. I would do calves at least 2 to 4 times a week, and you can mix up the angles, but mix up the exercise, do a mixture of seated and standing, and you have to keep track. These are different ways you can go about your training. But I think a lot of people either don't work them enough, they don't work them to failure enough because they hurt. It's like legs. People skip legs in general. People want to stop when it burns. Calves really, really, really hurt when you train them hard. They really hurt. And you know what happens when your calves are super fucking sore and they really hurt from training? You can't walk. So your body has different, I would say, burning sensations for different muscles because of a defense mechanism for survival. If you don't have calves, you're not walking. Your body knows this. Your calves are burning. It's going to affect your mobility. So your body almost pusses out at the end of sets a little bit more. It'll hurt more. It'll feel more sensitive. It'll feel more pain, and you'll be less likely to push through that burn because it's your only way of walking. It's going to be a little more defensive with its calves than with biceps. You're not walking on your arms. But when you push your calves to failure, it feels like a million daggers stabbing your lower leg, and you're going to stop early. But you have to understand that pushing to failure, not to injury, but you have to push the envelope beyond what you feel comfortable. And that is the only way that you're going to get growth no matter what your body responds to. Some people naturally have big hams on the back of their legs, and everyone that doesn't have calves is jealous. There's a reason why calves are classically a tough group for people to grow, because genetically they're not designed to be massive. They're designed to give us the function to walk. So don't be embarrassed. Don't be upset, on a big calf. Yeah, sometimes some people really train the shit out of them and they just don't develop calf. Like they really train the shit out of them and they don't have them. You can't say, oh, well, you're not doing the right thing. Yeah, maybe not, but people train them hard sometimes and just don't get results no matter how much they do. It's true. Some people's like just don't respond. Same thing with forearms. But these muscles, forearms and calves, for example, are areas where there's high frequency of activity, more endurance in the muscle tissue, not designed for absolute mass and strength, designed for tactile function and repetition over a long period of time, endurance, walking, doing things with your hands. Okay, so these are things that your body is designed to do naturally. We're looking for aesthetics. If you want to look a certain way, you're not always looking for function. You're looking for a look, which is not what your body is designed for. Your body is not designed to look a certain way. Your body is designed to do certain things a certain way. Think about that. So when you're struggling to get a result, remember that you're working against evolution. You're working against your genetics. You're working against what you're designed to do, what you're actually, put together for. You're put together for a function, not for a look. You're not put here to have, massive delts and big, calves and blah, blah. You're here to be able to walk and to be able to climb and to be able to lift and to be able to eat and to be able to have sex and have more humans. That's really what we're all here for. So that settles it. But try different things and push yourself and play around with the frequency. It's okay, in other words, to train calves more frequently. It's okay to go heavy and go light and do different things, but you have to push. So try that. Try more frequency. Try a mixture of heavy weight and lighter weight. You could do either or consistently. You can mix it up, but play around with it and keep track because you'll know what works until you do it consistently. Okay? Take some pictures, keep an eye on things, and track it over a period of time. All right? I'll say for a few minutes after I'm Busker and Periscope, calves are a pain in the ass for most people. Don't get down on yourself. Just push it. Take some metrics. Take some pictures. track your workouts, push yourself, do things that are uncomfortable, do things that are different, and there are a lot of different calf workouts and styles that you can do to make sure that you shock the body. So stay tuned. We'll be going over more of those in future episodes. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 95 of the Daily Mother Swole. Up top, the pipe shop. I will see you tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern Time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace out.